The unexamined life is not worth living. These were the words that Socrates chose not in triumph, but in chains. A man on trial, condemned not for crimes of the hand, but for questions of the mind. And yet, with his final breath, he left humanity a challenge, to dare to think, to question, to reflect. But why? Why does the act of thinking, of turning our gaze inward, matter so much, that one of history's greatest minds would rather die than live without it? Close your eyes for a moment. Now ask yourself, what do I truly know about myself, about the world? Behind the noise of daily life, the tasks, the notifications, the screens, lies a silence that most never enter. It is in that silence that the four great questions wait. Not questions you ask a search engine, not questions you answer in an exam, but questions that shape your very being. Questions that, whether you ask them or not, define how you live, love, fear and choose. These are the questions philosophers died for, the ones religions wrestled with, the ones science tried to frame but could never fully answer, and yet every single one of us will ask them, in a hospital bed, in a sleepless night, or when something breaks inside us. Question 1, who am I? Am I my memories, my choices, my brain, my soul, or am I something deeper, something that cannot be touched or measured? Second question, why do we suffer? If life is meant to be good, why is pain so common? Is suffering meaningless, or does it contain something sacred? Third question, is time real? Is time a flowing river or a trick of the mind? If time is an illusion, what does that say about life, death and eternity? Question 4, do I truly have free will? When I choose, is it me choosing, or is everything, every decision, every thought, just the product of chemicals and causes? These four questions are not intellectual games, they are mirrors, and sometimes they are doors. They can haunt you. But if you face them, they can also transform you. In this video, we will go deep, not with quick answers, not with quotes from self-help books, but with the raw, uncomfortable, fascinating truth. We'll walk through the corridors of ancient Greece and the temples of India. We'll sit beside modern neuroscientists and listen to monks in silence. And at the end, perhaps we'll not only understand life better, but ourselves too. So take a breath. Let go of distraction. And let's begin with the most haunting and beautiful question of all. Who am I? Who am I? The question that whispers when the room is quiet, that wakes us up in the middle of the night, not with fear, but with silence. Not what do I do or what do I have, but simply, who am I? René Descartes thought he had found the answer. I think, therefore I am. He believed that if everything else could be doubted, even the external world, the very act of thinking was proof of his existence. But is thought enough to define self? John Locke came later and said, no, we are our memories, our continuity through time. But what happens when memory fades? In Alzheimer's, in trauma, do we cease to be ourselves? Then David Hume entered the scene like a storm and claimed that the self was an illusion altogether, just a bundle of perceptions, always changing, never fixed. You're not a thing, he said, you're a process, a flowing stream, not a stone. The Buddha said something similar over 2,000 years earlier. He called it anatta, no self. That what we cling to as I is just a temporary illusion, a mirage created by attachment and desire. But if the self is an illusion, then who is it that observes that illusion? Who is asking the question, who am I? Neuroscience tried to step in. It showed us brain scans, neuron activity, regions lighting up during thought. We discovered the default mode network, the medial prefrontal cortex, the mirror neuron system. We split brains in surgery and found two selves fighting for control. We watched people lose their memories, and yet still respond with emotion to loved ones. We saw that the mind is not just memory or behavior, but something deeper, something strangely resistant to measurement. So what are we left with? A name that can be changed, a body, it ages, a brain, it rewires, memories, they fail, even personality changes through time, trauma, or therapy. So again we ask, who am I? Maybe we are not a thing to be defined, but a mystery to be lived. Maybe the self is not an object, but a subject, the one looking, not the one being looked at. And maybe, just maybe, that subject is not the product of neurons or evolution, but something greater, a reflection of a deeper mind, a fingerprint of the one who designed minds to begin with. Because if nothing in you is stable, if all of you can be lost, yet you still feel that you are, then perhaps your existence points not to matter, but to meaning. And that meaning may come not from what you think, but from the one who made you able to think. Pain is universal. No matter your language, country, faith or age, at some point life hurts. But why? Why does a world full of beauty also hold so much sorrow? The Stoics said, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. That we suffer not because of events, but because of how we judge them. Epictetus, born a slave, taught that pain is an opportunity, a chance to master our mind, not be mastered by it. He said, we cannot control what happens to us, only how we respond. Buddhism offered a different path. It teaches that suffering, dukkha, comes from attachment to people, to things, to outcomes, and that freedom comes when we let go, not of love but of grasping. But some, like Albert Camus, saw suffering as absurd. He looked at a silent universe, a world with no clear answers, and said, life is painful and meaningless. Yet even Camus did not despair. He said, the struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. And then there was Dostoevsky, who saw the face of suffering, in prisons, in poverty, in illness, and yet found something sacred in it. He wrote, suffering is the sole origin of consciousness. Could it be that suffering wakes us up, that pain, instead of being pointless, is a portal, a place where the soul sheds illusion and meets truth? Think of a seed. It breaks to grow. Think of gold. It must burn to be purified. Think of the night sky. Stars are born in violent collapse, and humans are forged not in comfort but in fire. Neuroscience tells us that pain rewires the brain, that trauma can lead to transformation, that adversity, when faced, can unlock strength, creativity, and even compassion. So what if suffering is not a punishment but a preparation? What if, hidden inside sorrow, is a signal? Not all suffering makes sense. We cannot justify every tear, every tragedy, but even in the darkness, we ask. We ask why, because somewhere deep down we feel there must be an answer. And maybe that instinct, the refusal to accept chaos as final, is itself a clue. A whisper that pain is not just chemical, but meaningful, that it carries weight and purpose and maybe even love. Because what kind of world would suffering make sense in? Perhaps one designed not to please us, but to shape us. And if we are being shaped, then who or what is shaping us? Maybe pain isn't proof of a godless world. Maybe it's the echo of a world where God is trying to reach us. Close your eyes for a moment and feel time passing. Seconds tick, breath flows, a moment becomes memory. But what is time? Is it a river that carries us forward, a ticking clock in the sky, or something much stranger, a trick of the mind, a fabric of the universe, or a veil we barely see through? Philosophers have wrestled with time for centuries. St. Augustine once said, "What then is time? If no one asks me, I know. But if I try to explain it, I don't." Immanuel Kant argued that time isn't something out there, but something inside us. That time, like space, is not an object, but a way the mind organizes experience. Without a mind to perceive it, time may not exist at all. Then came science. Einstein shattered the old picture. Time, he showed, is not separate from space, but woven into it. One thing, space-time, and it bends. With mass, with motion, with gravity. In one place a second passes, in another it's a little slower. Astronauts on the International Space Station age differently than we do on Earth. GPS satellites must adjust their clocks, or our phones would be lost in milliseconds. And then there's the block universe theory. According to it, past, present and future all coexist, like frames in a reel of film. We are not moving through time. We are experiencing slices of a fixed whole. But if time is just geometry, why do we feel it? Why does now feel different from before or after? No equation can explain the ache of nostalgia or the terror of a deadline or the feeling of eternity in a moment of beauty. Neuroscience says time is a function of attention, memory and expectation, that it lives not in clocks but in consciousness. But that raises a deeper question. If time is subjective, yet we all experience it, who gave us the capacity for such a thing? And if time bends, breaks, and can be slowed, is it really a fundamental reality? Or is it just a veil? Think of this. If the universe had a beginning, a Big Bang, then time itself had a beginning. But what existed before time? And how can something cause time without being in time? That question has haunted both physicists and theologians, because anything that causes time must be timeless, outside the system, beyond the frame, and so we return to an ancient idea that behind the river of time is the hand that poured it, that the flow we feel it is not an accident, but an intentional path designed by a mind beyond hours and years. Maybe time is not just a measurement. Maybe it's a message, a whisper that eternity exists, and that we are meant to hear it. Imagine this. You're standing at a crossroads, two paths, left or right. You feel the tension of choice, the weight of freedom. But did you really choose? Philosophers have debated free will for thousands of years. The ancient Greeks spoke of fate, of threads woven by gods. Later in the Enlightenment, a new idea emerged, that the universe is a machine, predictable, determined, governed by cause and effect. Pierre-Simon Laplace imagined a demon, not evil but all-knowing. If this Laplace's demon knew every particle's position and speed, it could predict the future with perfect accuracy. In that view, you are not a chooser, you are a domino, falling because of what came before. But deep inside we resist that. We feel free. We act as if we are free. We praise courage. We punish crime. Why would we do that if no one could have chosen otherwise? Then came neuroscience. In the 1980s, Benjamin Libet ran a famous experiment. He hooked up volunteers to monitors and asked them to move their finger whenever they chose. But something strange happened. Their brains decided milliseconds before they did. Some claimed this disproved free will, that the brain acts first and the mind catches up. But others disagreed. They said Libet didn't show a decision, only a readiness, and that awareness, that final yes or no, still belongs to the conscious self. And here's the twist. If you truly had no free will, how would you ever know it? Who would be the you discovering that fact? Determinism destroys the very idea of truth-seeking. If your beliefs are just neuron firings caused by chemistry, why should they be true, rather than just caused? So maybe free will isn't just real. Maybe it's required. Required for love, for justice, for meaning, for responsibility. And if we are free, truly free, then freedom must come from somewhere outside the system, not from the laws of physics, not from chance, but from something higher, a source of consciousness that grants choice, a will that gave will. Maybe we are not accidents in motion. Maybe we are acts of intention. And if that's true, then your choices are not illusions. They are sacred, because they reflect the image of the one who gave you the power to choose. We've searched deep into mind, pain, time and freedom, and each time we've touched the edge of something more. Yet one worldview insists otherwise: materialism. The belief that everything, thoughts, emotions, purpose, is nothing but atoms, forces and chemistry. But here's the problem: materialism can explain motion but not meaning. It can describe how neurons fire, but not why you feel beauty when a child laughs or guilt when you betray a friend. It can measure brain states, but not the self that observes them. And in the end, materialism can answer everything, except the very questions that matter most. Go back to the four great questions: who am I? Why do we suffer? Is time real? Do we have free will? Each one alone is powerful, but together they form something more. A pattern, a whisper, a hint of design. Why are we conscious? Why do we search for meaning? Why do we long for justice? Why does the universe have laws and we minds to discover them? These aren't bugs in the system, they're clues. And perhaps all these questions aren't pointing to a what, but to a who. In the silence between seconds, in the ache of beauty, in the trembling moment of a real choice, we feel it. The echo of something more, a truth not made of molecules, but of mind. The ancient Greeks called it logos, reason, order, the mind behind the cosmos. Others have called it God, not a beard in the clouds, but being itself, the source, the origin of consciousness, freedom and time. You don't have to be religious to sense it, you just have to be honest. Honest enough to say that atoms alone cannot cry or love or ask why. And so, we return to where we began. The unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates died for that belief. But what if he was pointing not just to question, but to the one who planted the questions inside us? If you feel the pull, stay with us, because this is just the beginning. More questions await, more journeys inward. Subscribe, and as always, just think.